Hey, how you going? I'm just doing a new video, total new topic. So I'm going to do a series just on communication, and it's because I've been reading this book. I don't know if you've read it, Super Communicators, even. And it is really about connection, and I sort of find that this is quite interesting. There are some excellent stories. This is from, I don't even know how to say his second name, Charles Duhigg. I'm very bad at names. He's written another book, Power of Habits. This was really a very interesting book, and I'm going to probably spend a little bit of time talking through this because there was just some really interesting thoughts in there, and I don't want to steal his thunder, and I'm not going to go through the book. I'm just going to do a little bit of a review and just get some interesting ideas out of there, the main three themes, and just talk very briefly about it. But one thing that I'm sort of fascinated about, and rightly so, is about communication and trying to be a better communicator all the time. It's probably not one of my natural things is to be a communicator. Excuse me. And I probably am, I could be a better communicator a lot of times. I think I'm all right. But I think there's always better things that you can do, and I'm always looking for books to sort of help me to understand myself a little bit more and how I communicate. And I think this book, Supercommunicators, it's a very recent book, I think. Let me just have a look. When is it? 2024. So very recent. But I think it's a really good book because it looks at communication in a slightly different way, something that I hadn't sort of seen before. And he's got such a engaging writing style as well. I quite like his writing style, and I like it's one of these books that I've seen in other things where, you know, you have a scenario, then he goes through, talks about the scenario, sets up the scenario, then talks about the science and other things that happen, then finishes off the scenario. So you've got this sort of idea of what's going on, but you've got this real example that's going through there. And one of the ones that I found really good, he talks about the gun debate in the United States, and how divisive it is. And then there was some research done on how we could get those people talking. And it was really interesting from a point of view of just trying to understand that and where it's gone and how people are now reacting to it, because it is so ingrained in, you're either pro or you're not. You don't sort of sit on the fence really. And then really sort of how both sides have valid arguments, but they can never communicate about it. And then he talks about an experiment they did, and some people ended up talking out of that from different sides and trying to help each other, try and understand. And that helped some of them to get a little bit more together. I don't think it's helped the argument overall, but at least some people are starting to communicate. And I sort of think if you can use some techniques that get those two types of people in terms of, you know, pro and against guns, who are which is a very polarizing, extremely polarizing. If you can get some of those talking together, then some of the things that you are talking about in communication must be worth listening to, because I think, you know, it's sort of interesting. So there's three things that he talks about, and I'm just going to use the contents really to sort of bring them out so that I can just remember. He talks about one thing about the matching principle. Another one, he talks about every conversation is a negotiation. What's this really about? And then the last one is really about the listening curve. He also has the last couple of chapters is about who we are as an individual, as a society, as a community, how that also impacts our communication style. But the first one was really the matching principle, is really about making sure that people are on the same page. And I mean, most people understand this about communication, that you've got to be listening and understand what the other person is saying. I mean, in the 7 Habits books, that's one of the key habits, you know, seek first to understand and then be understood. same sort of idea about this matching principle, where you're trying to sort of understand who you are and who they are, and how those two then work together. So it's really about trying to be in that person. So if they're sort of saying something, it's not just being like, yeah, yeah, and then moving on to your own self. It's really about opening up about that topic for yourself. So if you're talking about, I don't know, something about health, it's not then just about sort of like, yeah, I know you're sick, but I'm sick too, and this is my problem. It's not about trying to one-up them or something like that. It's really about trying to sort of say, oh yeah, you're sick, I understand. How does that really feel for you? I know that an uncle that I had, or I went through something similar, and so on and so forth. So you're really trying to match that person in terms of the place where they're at that particular point in time, and you're trying to be personal about it as well. A lot of times when I've heard things around communication, it's sort of like, don't reveal anything about yourself, because you don't want to do that, because it's all about them. But sometimes I think it's important to match that person, to sort of make sure that they realize that you do understand what they're talking about. So that was one of the things which I thought was really, he did it in a really different way. So I thought that was really great. The second one was about this, every conversation is a negotiation. It was really about, what does he call the question? Sorry, I should have this open, but it's, what is this really about? So it's really about the negotiation at the start is really about trying to set the scene so that you know what this is about. Is this an emotional conversation? Is this a task-oriented conversation? Is this a bit of both? Is there a mental layer? So it's all these layers are going on in every conversation, and sometimes one person might be talking about a task and somebody else is talking about emotion, and so they're never going to meet, and so therefore the conversation doesn't really flow or doesn't really get anywhere. And so this is really about trying to understand, well, what is this conversation about? I'm on a task and sort of like trying to work out how to fix the problem, but that's not what somebody else is talking about. I just want to talk about the problem. And so what is this really about? It's really this starting point to sort of ask little questions, to sort of say, it's nearly like when you're at a meeting or at the start of a situation, and you're just trying to find out a little bit about what are we here for, and that's the similar sort of thing. Sometimes you'll know because you'll know that person really well, so you know that, oh, okay, we're in an emotional conversation here because I can tell the signs. Sometimes oh, we're here just to get these things organized and get a task and get everybody off and running. But if you don't know the person, sometimes you have to do this negotiation first of all to sort of make sure that you're thinking about the conversation in the same way. So that was another really interesting thing, that we do that. And sometimes if we're in a new conversation, we forget to do that, because we're so used to our usual conversations where we know the people, that we have that instinct of knowing that this is a emotional, this is a task, this is a whatever conversation already. But when we're in a new one, we don't have that guidance, and we just sort of use the prompts that we think we have from other people to interpret this conversation when they could be totally wrong. And the last section that I sort of thought was really about how do we feel? It's sort of like that how do we feel conversation, and that putting that on top of the other things that we already know. It's really about trying to get to the emotional content of that. If it's an emotional conversation, the emotional content about how do we really feel and how do we sort of interpret that. There's so much with body language and so much with tone and all of these sort of things. How do we get that, and how do we understand that on the other side? Because I think a lot of times, as most conversations, everybody's about the talking because it's easy. The part of talking is easy. But what we really need to get better at is the interpretation of those talking, of all the other subtle things that are going on, to understand how that person's feeling in that conversation and what's really important to them at that particular point in time. So those things are the things that they're going on about. And this book, I think, is really good, a different view on it. It has been a bestseller, I think, as well. I saw it in the audio and some of the other sort of things always in the top 10 for a long time. And I think it is a very interesting book to talk to really get a sort of understanding of how we can connect with people in a better way, and connection through communication. So if you're interested in books on communication, I really strongly recommend that this one be a starting point. And I will be talking about one of the other books that he's written, The Power of Habit, because that's something else that I'm reading at this point in time. It's always like that. You get one and you start doing it. Anyway, another book review. I do like doing those because I do a lot of reading and I do a lot of self-help. I've done a couple others over the time. This one's really good. Really think it's worth a read. Anyway, if you like it, give it a thumbs up. Go get the book. And also just enjoy. And let me know what you think of it. Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon. Bye.